The last time I saw my boss, Chief Nnamdi, he was getting into his car like he always did, with his sunglasses on and his expensive gold watch flashing under the sun. It was past midnight when his wife, Madame Amaka, knocked frantically on my door, her voice shaking. Chica, have you seen Chief? He's missing. That's when I knew things were about to go wrong. I'd seen people go missing before in the village, but not someone as rich and powerful as Chief Nnamdi. And deep down, I feared I knew who was behind it. Chief Nnamdi had money, or at least everyone thought he did. He was the kind of man who wore gold chains and drove fancy cars. But little did we know, it was all borrowed. What only a few of us knew, though, was that the new house girl, Ifunanya, and the gateman, Musa, were seeing each other in secret. She was always whispering things to him, and I'd seen them sneaking around. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now it made sense. They must have thought kidnapping him would bring them money beyond their wildest dreams. Madame Amaka went straight to the police, shouting and crying about her missing husband. She wore her jewel tightly tied, her eyes red and swollen, calling for the police to find her husband immediately. The police came, asked questions, checked his office, his car, even his favorite bar. But there was nothing. They told her to stay calm, that Chief would show up soon, but I could tell she was far from calm. The whole village started talking, and the whispers began. No one expected Chief Nnamdi to vanish without a trace. A week after Chief's disappearance, Madame Amaka got a strange call. The voice on the other end was deep and rough, saying they had her husband and wanted a ransom. She tried to act calm, but I saw her hands shaking as she wrote down the amount. 5 million naira. I could feel the tension in the room as she agreed to pay. But what worried me most was that she didn't know where to get that kind of money. Everyone thought Chief was rich, but we all knew Madame Amaka wasn't handling any business or money. Ifunanya, the house girl, had been acting strange since Chief went missing. She usually had a quiet, obedient way about her, but now she seemed nervous, her eyes darting everywhere as if she expected something terrible. I started wondering if she knew more than she let on. The other workers in the compound began whispering that maybe Ifunanya was hiding something. I decided to watch her closely, hoping I could figure out what she was hiding before it was too late. Musa, the gateman, was another person acting strangely. He'd been working with Chief for years, always polite, always respectful, but now he was acting like he was above us all, giving orders and keeping secrets. It was odd, because he'd been like a shadow before, unnoticed, always doing his job without complaint. But now he was silent and avoided our eyes, especially whenever Chief's disappearance was mentioned. Something was definitely wrong. One night, I overheard a heated conversation between Ifunanya and Musa. They didn't realize I was nearby, listening. The ransom will come any day now, Ifunanya said in a low voice. Once we have it, we'll be far from here, somewhere they can't find us. I felt a chill run down my spine. So it was true. They had planned this together, thinking they'd become millionaires overnight. But they were wrong, very wrong. The following day, Madame Amaka struggled to find the money for the ransom. She went from relative to relative, even talking to the village's wealthier people, but no one wanted to help her. Everyone knew Chief lived lavishly, yet somehow she was pleading as if he were poor. People began to whisper about Chief's debts and loans, saying he was drowning in borrowed money. That's when I realized that Ifunanya and Musa had made a big mistake. Chief didn't have real money to give. As Madame Amaka scrambled to find money for the ransom, loan collectors started visiting the house. They came in nice cars and pressed suits, asking for Chief. They wanted to know when he would pay back his debt. Madame Amaka's face turned pale when they started threatening to take things from the house. I watched as she pleaded with them, telling them she'd find a way to pay. But I knew things were spiraling out of control. Ifunanya started getting nervous when she realized the ransom money wasn't coming. She thought Chief's wife would have it by now, that she would pay anything to get her husband back. But every time she checked her phone, there was no news of the ransom. I saw her pacing back and forth, talking in frantic whispers with Musa. They looked like they were about to crack. Their plan was falling apart. Musa was starting to lose his patience. He'd been convinced that they would be living in luxury by now, far away from the village, but they were still waiting. I overheard him arguing with Ifunanya, accusing her of messing up the plan. "You said he was rich," Musa shouted. "You said they'd pay anything to get him back." Ifunanya tried to calm him down, but I could tell the tension between them was getting worse. This wasn't going the way they'd imagined. Days passed, and there was still no ransom money. Chief's debts started catching up to him, and his wife couldn't pay a single kobo for his release. I could see the frustration on Ifunanya's face each time she looked at her phone, waiting for the ransom call that never came. Musa's patience was wearing thin, and the once secretive lovers were now at each other's throats. Their greed was tearing them apart. As more loan collectors came, Madame Amaka became desperate. She tried to keep everything together, pretending in public that everything was fine, but the reality was clear. The house was falling apart, and everyone in the village knew it. Ifunanya and Musa realized their plan was doomed, but it was too late to back out. They were in too deep, and the more time passed, the more dangerous the situation became. While his kidnappers were losing hope, Chief Nnamdi was plotting. They had underestimated him, thinking he'd be an easy hostage. But Chief was smart and knew they were desperate. He watched them closely, noting every weakness. Every time Musa and Ifunanya argued, he listened, biding his time. He knew that if he played his cards right, he could turn the tables on them. One morning, I noticed an unusual silence around the house. Madame Amaka was on her phone, pacing back and forth with a look of dread. It seemed the loan officers had come to seize Chief's assets. She pleaded with them, but they had no patience. They were taking everything, leaving nothing behind. I watched, feeling sorry for her, but there was nothing anyone could do. Chief's life of luxury had finally come crashing down. With Chief's assets being seized, Musa grew even more desperate. He didn't understand why the ransom wasn't paid, why Chief's wealth seemed to vanish. He grabbed Ifunanya, accusing her of lying. "You said he was rich. Where's the money?" But Ifunanya had no answers. They had made a mistake, a terrible mistake, and now they were in a mess they couldn't get out of. News of Chief's financial troubles spread quickly, and soon the police got involved. Madame Amaka had reported her husband missing, and now the law was getting involved. Ifunanya and Musa knew their time was running out. The more they argued, the more they realized they couldn't hold on to Chief much longer. Fear began to replace their greed. In the hideout where they kept Chief, Ifunanya and Musa broke into a full-blown fight. They were blaming each other for the failed plan, their frustration boiling over. Chief, watching their chaos, saw his opportunity. He knew that if he made the right move, he could escape while they were distracted. While Musa and Ifunanya were busy arguing, Chief seized his chance. With a quick dash, he slipped out of his restraints and ran. By the time his captors noticed, he was already gone. They panicked, knowing he would go straight to the police. They had nowhere to hide, and now they knew they were in deep trouble. Chief ran through the narrow streets, heading straight for the police station. Ifunanya and Musa, realizing the danger they were in, tried to catch him, but he was faster and more determined than they thought. The closer he got to the station, the further their dreams of wealth slipped away. Chief arrived at the police station, breathless and disheveled. He told them everything, how his own servants had kidnapped him, hoping to cash in on his supposed wealth. The police listened carefully, taking down every detail. They immediately sent a team to track down Ifunanya and Musa. It didn't take long for the police to find Ifunanya and Musa. They were hiding in a small shack on the edge of the village, trembling with fear. The officers surrounded them, guns drawn, and ordered them to surrender. Their faces were pale, realizing their greed had destroyed them. Ifunanya and Musa faced trial, their shame evident as the villagers gathered to watch. They had once been trusted servants, but their greed had brought them to ruin. The judge listened to the case, the evidence laid out clearly. There was no escape for them now. The judge declared them guilty, sentencing them to prison. Ifunanya and Musa's faces were etched with regret. Their plan, which they thought would bring them fortune, had left them with nothing but disgrace and imprisonment. The villagers shook their heads, knowing the two had destroyed their own lives. Chief Nnamdi returned to the village, but things were different now. He'd lost most of his assets, and his lavish lifestyle was over. People no longer looked at him with admiration. They saw the man who had fooled them all, the man who lived on borrowed money and got kidnapped by his own servants. Madam Amaka chose to leave Chief, unable to forgive him for the deception. She returned to her family, leaving Chief to face his ruined reputation alone. The story of his kidnapping and downfall became a cautionary tale in the village, a lesson on greed, deception, and betrayal. In prison, Ifunanya had all the time to think about her actions. She regretted everything, realizing how foolish she'd been to believe Musa's promises of wealth and escape. She knew she'd thrown away her life for a dream that never existed. Musa, too, was filled with regret. He'd been a respected gateman, trusted by Chief's family, but his greed had cost him everything. In the dark prison cell, he knew he'd never regain the respect or freedom he once had. The village never forgot the tale of Chief Nnamdi's kidnapping and the betrayal by his own servants. People began to speak openly about the dangers of greed and the hollow life of those who live beyond their means. It became a story for parents to tell their children, a warning for anyone tempted by wealth and power. Chief Nnamdi's reputation was shattered, his wealth gone, his family left in pieces. Ifunanya and Musa served their time, haunted by their own foolishness and greed. And in the end, everyone learned that the true price of deception and greed is far higher than they could ever imagine. The villagers had been given a powerful lesson, one that would echo for years to come. Thank you for tuning in to Tales Motherland again. We sincerely appreciate your viewership and likes and comments. Please be sure to hit the subscribe and like button and stay connected to us for new intriguing African stories and folktale. Once again, thanks for watching.